So, part 2 in the series, Holistic Human, we're going to be talking about the ultimate example of balance. Can you say a little bit more about that?
So, we ourselves are humans, right? And everyone on this earth is a human. Nobody really is a spiritual being. So we can't really know or tell how the other side feels, right? But we have a great example of Jesus Christ, who was a spiritual being. He was God, and he also was a human being, right? Yeah. So he meshed together. Yeah. And he was alive, and we have records of that. We have records of his life, right? And they show us what a true holistic human being is, right? Being physical, but at the same time spiritual. So we're going to look at Jesus because he's the ultimate example of a balanced, holistic human being.
So we're going to break this conversation up into 5 pieces. So the first piece is going to be, how was Jesus a social human?
Quite interesting. It doesn't talk much about Jesus' life before he was 30, before his ministry started. He was a carpenter's son. The only aspect really sees when one time he was in the synagogue when he was a young age, and he was talking to the Pharisees, and they're amazed, like, whoa, how does this guy know so much? He's so young. But besides that, we really see his social aspect grow once he goes into his ministry, right?
Yeah.
First thing he did before he started is he gathered 12 disciples. Why? He's God. He's the Son of God. He knows everything he needs to say. He has all the power to do everything himself, right?
Yeah.
Why does he need 12 people? From the get-go, that shows that God is very social. He loves the people around him. Jesus was the same way. He was very social. He loved going to events. He loved spending time with his disciples. He loved talking to people in the crowds. He loved serving people.
His first miracle was at a wedding.
Exactly.
Right.
Why was he invited? Because he was a quiet guy? I don't think so. I think he made an impression on the groom and bride that
bride and groom,
that made them invite him, right? So that's the interesting part. Jesus was very social. He loved social events.
Right on. That's perfect. And in the same way, we are also called to be social beings. In the Bible, it says fellowship. Practice hospitality. Yeah. Don't be, what is that word?
Secluded almost?
Yes. Recluse.
Don't
be a recluse. Practice socializing. Practice hospitality. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2.
I would say Jesus was physical. So you want to touch up on that?
Sure. This is a really interesting aspect of Jesus because despite being God, he was also so relatable to the point where John laid on his chest. I want you to imagine that for a second. John, the beloved disciple of Jesus, laying on the chest of Jesus. What kind of safe environment, an intimate environment did Christ create for John to feel so comfortable? My question for you is this. Do you practice that physically intimate environment in your home? Whether that's with your spouse, whether that's with your kiddos, whether that's people in your environment. Do they come close? Do you let them in and say, hey, I'm here for you? I think that's a really beautiful example. Okay, what's number 3?
Number 3 was, we can jump into emotional, because from physical you can lead to emotional, right?
Yeah.
And I believe Jesus was very emotional. 2 major examples was Lazarus. When he died, Jesus was weeping. He was crying. He was in sorrow that his friend died. He was still going to resurrect him, but that doesn't mean the fact that Jesus had emotions. Right. Same thing on Gethsemane when he was up there crying because he was afraid. He had fear, right? He was afraid of what was to come. And he was okay with expressing that in front of the Lord, in front of his Father, right? That takes so much vulnerability and so much emotional awareness for him to be like, I am scared.
Right on.
I know exactly what's going to happen, but I still need emotional support.
Let this cup pass by me. I really don't want to take this on.
So Jesus was super emotional when it came to things, especially those close to him, right? Yeah. He would cry. He would enjoy people's company. He would build relationships emotionally, and he would be really warm to people or very harsh to people. depending on who they were. So
I was going to say, oftentimes we look at these positive traits of Jesus, but we don't really like to talk about those traits that are not really socially acceptable, which is that part in the temple when Jesus became angry and started flipping tables.
One can say the sinful part, right? You can't get angry, you can't have fear, you can't have all those things. No, that's a very natural part of emotion. You denying fear and anger is like you deny love and affection, right? It's the same concept. That makes you human, that makes God God. God gets angry in the Bible all the time for righteous reasons.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for self-seeking reasons, but for righteous reasons, God gets angry all the time.
That's terrible. It sounds terrible.
But he channels his anger in the proper direction.
Right.
When Jesus got angry in the temple, was he because he was so angry for no reason? No, he was really angry because the house of the Lord was being defaced.
Right.
It was used as a den of thieves.
Right on.
That's like your house being used as a house of prostitution. Would you really, really like that? Or would you get really angry if you came home and your house is where your family is raised, where your kids are raised, is being used as a house of prostitution? How angry would you be? Right? That makes it personal, right? Think about that yourself. So God had all right to be angry. And sometimes we do too, just right anger.
I think that's a really good point. So if I could stay on this topic for just a little bit, I want to take it one step deeper. I hear people say, as Christians, we're not allowed to be emotional. We're not allowed to express our emotions. That's bad. We're not supposed to trust our emotions. We're not supposed to follow our emotions. And I'm thinking, that's one entire aspect of a human. That's 20% of a human that we invalidate and say that's bad.
Yeah.
That's like saying, well, don't chase or don't pursue the intellectual aspect of a human because that can lead you astray too. Yeah. Okay, so we're eliminating the emotional aspect, the intellectual aspect, right?
Well, you might as well add social to that because, any kind of social event besides church is a sin too. So at that point, and then physical is completely flesh-based, so you can't do that either. So you only have spiritual left. So that doesn't make you human, though. That basically makes you a spirit. So I'm not sure what you're doing here. But that's the funny part is we eliminate, out of the 5 aspects, we eliminate these things, right? And we're like, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. But Jesus did them all. So who's right here?
And Jesus encouraged us to participate in all of them.
Yeah.
I think I'm going off on a tangent.
A little bit.
But I think it's a really good kind of tangent because I really want to drill this topic home. Song of Solomon is completely a physically based book, physical, emotional, right? And then there are other aspects of the Bible or of God where it's like, okay, Proverbs is intellectual. Seek my commandments, seek to understand, seek counselors. That's intellectual.
Psalms is completely spiritual and emotional.
There you go.
Because David was weeping and he was so weak in his spirit, that's all he was craving.
There you go.
The Bible's chock full of those things, of emotions, of social, of intellectual, of physical, and of spiritual.
Relational.
God wants us to be whole humans. That's 5 of them. And Jesus was all of them, right? He was very intellectual. He loved reading the Word. He practiced reading the Word. Even though he knew it, for some reason he still chose to read it. It makes sense, right? Because he wanted to grow deeper. He wanted people to understand. Most of all, Jesus was also very spiritual. He would leave away from everything into his prayer closet, onto the mountain, into the garden, and he would pray. He would spend time being spiritual. But he didn't neglect that. He didn't make that his whole focus. If you read the Bible, you don't see Jesus praying, 80% of the time. No, he had a very balanced life. He did physical things, he did social things, he did intellectual things, he did emotional things, and he did spiritual things. He was very balanced as a human being. He has the perspective of both sides of being a human and being a God, being a spirit. Which
makes him to a huge degree relatable.
Yeah, because he was human and spiritual. So if we're trying to be too spiritual, we're missing out on what God created us to be. We're human and we're spiritual. Combination.
I mean, if we're too of anything, right, that breaks the balance. But if we seek that balance and honor the Lord in all of these aspects of our life, that's how we can truly honor him and other people. And to be quite honest, truly honor ourselves. Because here's the thing. So often I hear people say, well, if I were to live this way and honor my intellectuality, my physical care, the relational care, I would become selfish. It's almost like we're not allowed to explore these other aspects because of that taboo that surrounds them. Right? And that's actually what we're going to go into in the next video. So stay tuned.